Our next speaker is Bryan Fischer. He is the MBE Model-Based Engineering Consulting Head. He's from ITI, a Wipro company, and his talk will be on the next generation MBE Capability and Maturity Assessment, a refined approach for baselining digital transformation. And Bryan, we can see your screen, your PowerPoint's coming up.
Great. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. As we see here, the talk today is going to be about the next generation approach to MBE capability and maturity assessment. And really, it's about digital transformation, the value that comes from digital transformation. I'll start with a little bit of background information. I've been involved in, I've got about 35 years experience, a little more. Been involved in mechanical design and engineering and analysis for those years. My career's focused on product definition design, done a lot of design work, many industries. I'm currently leading the ITI Wipro MBE consulting practice, and we are bringing MBE and digital transformation to our clients and helping to lead them to higher levels of success. And part of what we're going to talk today has to do with what success means and how to achieve it. I'm an ASME fellow. I do a lot of training, and I've been involved in standards since 1992. On the right, you can see I've written a bunch of books about different aspects, a lot about GD&T, the Drawing Requirements Manual in 2008. It is now an almost 1,300-page book on drawing standards, and I added a new section on model-based product definition and ASME Y1441, published in 2008. You're going to see I'm going to talk a lot about why we don't want to focus on drawings in this presentation, and perhaps a good way to think of that is, why would we need a 1,200-page book on drawing standards? Well, they're complicated, right? So there's got to be a better way to describe things. But as you'll see, we're not just going to talk about drawings and models. So the current approaches to MBD and MBE are somewhat limited. I think they're from the original ideas on MBD, and the original idea of MBD was to replace 2D drawings with 3D models. And initially that was, well, let's just use the 3D CAD geometry to replace the views of the product and the dimensions on the drawing. But early approaches to MBD and also MBE were really centered around this product definition data, the models, drawings, and design activity. Is really from a design point of view. What a lot of these MBE implementations, companies would then taking this thinking, and really what they would see are very much an incremental or small improvement. They pretty much, most of the approaches that I've seen are taking 2D drawings and replacing them with 3D drawings. Which is not really what people really should want to do. That you're not going to see good improvement if you don't change how you work. So that's our challenge. How do we get value? How do we get return on investment for investing in MBD and migrating from a current operating environment to becoming a model-based enterprise? I'm going to start off with a couple definitions just to baseline everybody on what I mean when I talk about MBD and MBE. And these are not the legacy ideas that I just described. These are more up to date. These are more current thinking. The definition of MBD that I'm proposing, or the one that I use, is a system and techniques to define business products and processes using semantic data instead of documents. So it's a way to define business products and processes using computer interpretable information instead of documents. The main purpose of MBD is this, very clearly stated, is to increase the value of business critical information and intellectual property. The goal of MBD is to increase the value of business critical information. And this business critical information very likely is information we already have. The digital data is master definition, and our goal is to decrease the time required to use the information, decrease the burden on other activities, and decrease scrap rework, RFIs, really increase the efficiency. We want to increase the efficiency, productivity, quality, profitability. And interestingly, if we use MBD, we increase the value of our staff. And our goal is to enable automation, right? That's the purpose of MBD, is to allow us to use that information directly, not manually. A model-based enterprise, this is a very simple definition, is an organization that's focused on using MBD, and that focus goes across the enterprise and throughout the product lifecycle. The goal of a model-based enterprise, very simply, is to obtain the maximum value from business critical information. So I'm going to go back. With MBD, we are trying to increase the value and make our business critical information intellectual property more valuable. And a model-based enterprise is the business environment in which we do that. It's the environment in which we achieve the highest value that we can. And our goals are to eliminate manual and document-based activities, provide the benefit of MBD to all business activities. Again, this is critical. A lot of the early ideas of MBD were focused on the design part of the design part of the company. And really the main benefits and ROI from MBD come from everywhere else. If and only if the organization is willing, able, and structured to take advantage of this information that can be used. Just because we create information that can be used by everybody else doesn't mean that they will or they're willing. To say, I'm going to restate this idea here in a different way. The goal of MBD and a model-based enterprise is to increase the value of the intellectual property, the staff, the labor we expend, and the value of our capital expenditures and our operating expenditures. The money we've spent and the money we're going to spend, we want to get the most bang for the buck. And that is truly what MBD and MBE are about. We've invested some money. How well is that performing for our business? What is the bottom line effect on the expenditures that we've already sunk? We're going to spend more money to continue to operate the business. Are we getting the most value from that? This presentation is about assessment. It's a short presentation. I don't have a lot of time, so this is pretty condensed. Usually I'm pretty wordy. Our approach to MBE assessment is to focus on business value. And we're going to separate that from the potential business value of an organization to the realized business value. We're the OEM, we're operating in some fashion, we've sunk a bunch of money through capital expenditures, we have a lot of operating expenses, and we're obtaining some business value. However, perhaps if we change how we work, what our business artifacts look like, how information flows, maybe we can increase what we're actually, the value we're actually receiving, and that's really what we're going to try to evaluate and accomplish with an assessment. And again, this looks at efficiency, productivity, quality, time to market, throughput, profitability. It's not just about 2D drawings and 3D models. Now I say that, and when I showed you my slide about my background, that is my background. My background is very much 2D drawings and 3D models. But really, when we are looking at MBD and MBE, we're really looking at business. We're not looking at a technical subject. When we perform the assessment, we should initially focus on the current state and only focus on the current state. We need to look at the entire enterprise, internal and external, supply chain, maybe upstream if there's such a thing. It depends on your environment, regulatory. We need to look at all the instances and the uses of product and process data. Where are we creating information and where are we using it? How are we using it? How efficiently? The categories that we should look at and do look at in our assessments are the approach of the business, the culture, the environment, the information artifacts, the information flow, the information management, infrastructure, so hardware, software, technology, platforms as well. Leadership, so leadership and culture are two different things, and leadership occurs at different levels. Culture occurs at different levels. Quality systems, resiliency, security, and work execution. How do we do our work? sorry. I think I went the wrong way. So I'm going to define some more terms here. Again, we're looking at the current state when we assess. We're going to have the current MBE capability of the enterprise, and that's the potential business value of the current state. We've invested some amount of money in the business. We've got capital, we've got labor, we've got trained staff. We have a lot of potential. So we need to understand what is that potential. And the MBE maturity is what we're actually realizing from that potential. So the maturity, I think, is always going to be lower than the capability. What we want to know, and we want to be able to calculate this, and this is part of what the assessment gives us, is what's the difference between what we could be doing, the capability, and what we are doing. What we potentially could be getting this value, we're actually realizing this value. Well, it's a pretty simple formula, right? The value that we're actually receiving versus the value that we could be deriving from all of our investments is this MBE capability gap, the current MBE gap. Now I see this current MBE gap as the value that we could obtain today with a minimal capital expenditure. Meaning, again, the current MBE capability is actually what's there today. Oops, it's already based on what we've invested, what we have in place. This is low-hanging fruit as we change from where we are to what we could be doing based on our current investments. There is cost. This isn't free, right? This isn't free to close this gap by no means, and it's certainly by no means painless, but it's less expensive than having to expend new capital to get there, to buy new equipment, new software. The future state of MBE capability, we're going to do the same thing. We're just now looking at, when we do the assessment, we'll also plan to, where do we want to be? I'm going to go back. We are currently, let's say we are currently here. We move and we then say, let's say we close this gap. So this then becomes our realized MBE capability. We'll go to the future and say, well, in the next 2 years, we want to achieve this level of capability. And very likely, we probably don't want to say, well, I'm going to invest this amount of money and then expect that I'm able to realize 100% of that. We probably want to build in a little bit extra. We've had some discussions earlier about cloud and infrastructure and the changing nature of employee expectations. It may be that we want to build in more to our future capability and realize that in stages, in phases. So our future MBE maturity may in fact happen in a few stages, but we build more capability than we initially intend to use all at once. Like I say, it's a short presentation. So the assessment should focus on evaluating business value, not drawings and models. Drawings and models are part of it. They are part of MBD, but they are not MBD. MBD is much broader than drawings and models. MBD can be applied to all business information that can be digitalized. And the premise is if we can digitalize it, we can obtain more business value from that information. In our work and with our assessment and our consulting, our goal is to help our clients, and this is important, to help them to understand their situation and the potential value of where they are with respect to digitalization. Design, develop, test, and implement the infrastructure systems and processes to achieve higher levels of digitalization and utilization. We want to help, as I've said several times, we want companies to be able to obtain their maximum value from business critical information and intellectual property. These really are not two different things. They're just different ways to describe the same thing. And ultimately, we want to help them obtain the maximum value from the money that they're spending. Many companies have purchased CAD, PLM, lots and lots of software. They have ERP, very powerful systems in place, a lot of customization, and they're not taking advantage of it much at all. They're really using it in a rudimentary fashion. One of the keys to getting better utilization of the resources is to understand the potential of the resources. Thank you. That's really the extent of my presentation. It's very short. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. We have a couple. One's basically a comment. Both items are coming from Dan regarding the acronym MBD, model-based definition. There's also the systems equivalent known as model-based design. So it's helpful to differentiate between the physical versus behavioral domains by using the terms 3D MBD for physical and sys MBD for system dynamic behavior that is often implemented by software. And then the question comes, why not just use the term MBE for the broader definition that you were looking for that covers all digitization improvements and benefits?
Yeah, these aren't the best terms. MBD and MBE are not the best terms. Let's go back. So these are legacy terms, and I think again, when very well maybe the term MBD came out of Boeing. I'm not sure, but it came out of aerospace. I'm pretty sure. I think my old business partner came up with the term MBE, model-based enterprise. We founded recently, I mentioned this earlier, or I didn't mention it, I kind of blew through it. I helped found the ASME MBE Standards Committee. We split off from the Y14 standards. I'm still involved there, but we created a new standards committee. We had a meeting yesterday. The MBE Standards Committee, and one of the things that, to me personally, that became apparent as we went into it is, man, this isn't really the right term. I've had people in the STEP community, the STEP standards community, tell me, you know, that's really not a good term. You shouldn't be using MBD because it means different things to different people, like software versus, you know, it's a simulation idea versus is it actually CAD models? I do have slides that talk about 3D MBD. I think the right approach is to extend model-based definition and broaden it and describe it as I'm describing it here. And in this case here, I believe that we could say that the simulation uses for software evaluation, those are increasing the value of business critical information. They fall under this domain. The issue, let me just say this though, the issue isn't the terms. I'm bringing these, the only reason I brought these two definition slides, I talked to my partner here in the consulting practice. I'm not the only one. I talked about, should I bring these slides in? The only reason I brought these slides in was to make sure that we're thinking of MBD as broader than drawings or models, that we're thinking of it in this very broad sense of business value. Hopefully that's a sufficient answer.
I think you bring up a good point that acronyms are tough to kind of manage within any sort of use space. And when we're talking about engineering systems and engineering businesses as a whole, with all the different types of products and types of initiatives internal to the business, it's hard to have a settled set of acronyms. But I like the idea of model-based definition as defining your business, defining all pieces of your business, not just a model.
Yeah.
I think that's all the time we have.
Let me say one more thing, just real quick. Sorry. These standards, you know, this is all about terminology and tools and concepts, and everybody doesn't agree. I mean, people come in and you have a room that are people, a lot of people thinking about CAD and design, and other people thinking about business, and other people thinking about model-based systems engineering and business structure and artificial intelligence. And so you get all these different ideas. It's very difficult when because really what we're talking about is a confluence of mechanical engineering, mechanical design, product design, and product engineering, all disciplines coming together, how a business works, and IT and software, right? All those things have kind of collided into this space, and it makes it really difficult. Things were really easy when I was just talking about drafting, right?
Indeed. Thanks, Brian.